Good evening, relatives. Mene wo stat nanehav. I'm Crystal Tubles. I'm Oglala Lakota, Northern Cheyenne. I'm here as the director of the LANDBACK campaign with NDN Collective. We're here in so-called Washington, D.C. as the LANDBACK team. I'll let my team introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into some conversation about why we're here, why NDN Collective's here in D.C., why our team chose to also come along, and dive into the complicatedness of what it means to be here in this space. But I'll hand it over to you. Introduce yourself.
Sure. Hey y'all, my name is Nadia. I'm Palestinian, born and raised in the Bay Area in the Ohlone Territory in Huchen, and calling in today obviously from Piscataway Territory. You can see the Capitol building behind us. And I'll pass it to...
Yat shik'e do shidane'e ado she'anotso she'e Demetrius Johnson. I'm a LANDBACK organizer here, calling in from hot, muggy, humid DC. The Capitol building's right behind me, and it sucks. Yeah, that's all I got.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, so, we wanted to go live, why we're here. But first, I want to talk a little bit about LANDBACK. It's been a little bit since we've talked about LANDBACK on any of our socials, and so, just revisiting what is LANDBACK. LANDBACK is the literal reclamation of land, right? It's literally reclaiming land that was stolen from us and that we were forcibly removed from in the land that we had deep relationship to. And so LANDBACK is the reclamation of that. It's the reclamation of our relationship to the land. And that means that we're also acknowledging that we were fully thriving economies and societies and communities pre-colonization. And, we're also reclaiming all of our relationships to these things that were stolen from us when we were forcibly removed from the land. Things such as language and ceremony and culture, spirituality, but also things like economy and education and housing, healthcare, food. All of these things were based on our relationship to the land. And so for the work that we're doing, we do that in many different ways. And we do that because LANDBACK is a meta-narrative, right? So similar to that of Black Lives Matter, LANDBACK is this meta-narrative that is powered by entire movement, right? And powered by organizations and collectives and nonprofits and individuals, grassroots groups, nations, all of these power and build out our movement to reclaim land, and that happens in many different ways. And for us, the campaign is just one way that we are working to contribute to and to support that movement. Not having any ownership of that at all, but just really wanting to step into this generations-long battle. Because the reality is that LANDBACK organizing has been happening since the first settlers, first step foot on our lands, all of our lands. And so, this is something that our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our parents had organized around to reclaim that relationship. And so for us, we're just simply stepping into it and creating and supporting this movement for what will hopefully be a really beautiful and decolonized future, And so I just wanted to share a little bit about, what LANDBACK is, the way that our team holds it, the way that we organize. We as a campaign contribute to the movement in several ways, right? We're developing out a LANDBACK agenda, which is part of why we're here, which is our political demands, just around executive orders, legislation, administrative actions that can be taken to create the conditions for our peoples and our nations to reclaim land. We provide movement support in terms of amplifying and uplifting all the organizing, the powerful organizing that's happening at the grassroots level all across the so-called United States, so-called Canada, so-called Mexico, and all of the different territories, the so-called territories of the U.S. And so we're supporting them. We can resource them. We offer, capacity support, developing out strategy, things like that. But we also work around our narrative, right? So when Native people or Indigenous people say LANDBACK, the first thing that often happens is that people have fear. Their first question is all of it? Like, yeah, all of it, all of this is our land. And so we're trying to reclaim that relationship. But also there's fear that we will replicate systems of harm that was enacted on us. And that's just not true. We're not out here trying to replicate those systems. And so we have our narrative, we have political education, we've written several different position papers, we have LANDBACK University, and we try to provide education and knowledge to our people by our people. And then we also work around, what is the narrative? Oh, the local work. The biggest part of our work is the Black Hills. And so we organize around reclaiming the Black Hills, and that has been the longest standing lawsuit against the United States government, to reclaim the land. And so currently, there's money sitting there, and not one person has accepted that money yet, because it's never been about the money. It's always been about reclaiming our relationship to everything that we hold sacred. And so that's some of the work that we do with NDN Collective through the LANDBACK campaign team. But what I really want to talk about and kind of get into is a little bit more complicated of why we're here. Our team didn't want to be here. In fact, most of the folks that are here with us didn't want to be here either. It's a really complicated place to be, and it's a tactic that we utilize, but it's not our favorite, nor do we think that it is the way to our liberation, the way to our sovereignty, or the way to our self-determination. But it is a way to reduce some harm. It is a way to have decisions, or to have an impact on decisions that impact our daily lives and the daily lives of our people. And so because of that, we had to make the choice to come and to be present. But I want to dive into more of just like how complicated it is and how hard it is to be here and to be advocating in this space and not really fully believing in it either. But I don't know, Nadia, D, or if you either have thoughts on some of that complicatedness, and we'll just dive into conversation.
Yeah, thanks for that, Krist. I think, something that we've been talking about a lot as the LANDBACK campaign, and as the team of, us three, spending so much time with each other over the past month, really, are, of course, the political contradictions that come up with being here in, the belly button of empire, right? Advocating or, requesting, making political demands from the original colonizing entity of this land, right? There is a political contradiction in that. There is a hypocrisy in that. And I think, through this, we've also had to be really humble about the position that we are in as LANDBACK organizers and as people who come from, we're young, but at this point also years of organizing, some of us formal education. Being able to have access is not something that we take lightly or for granted. Access to what is the political question that we have to parse through, right? And I think none of us, yes, what Crystal said is correct. None of us wanted to be here. And it feels icky. It feels weird to be here, in the seat of colonialism, truly, at a time when so many people in this so-called nation are struggling, right? Poor and working people, Indigenous people, our Black siblings, immigrant people. It's hard. It's really hard times. And I think that also calls for us to have, I don't know, in like fancy terms, you call it like a materialist analysis, right? But like getting real about what's what, right? What are the things that are impacting us and what are the things that we can change? Policy is powerful because it has the ability to make big changes. The political will for representatives to do that comes from our organizing. And that's why our organizing is so powerful, because the end goal is not just policy. It's to actually empower our communities. It's to move towards sovereignty, which is not just our right as colonized people or as Indigenous people, but it's our future, right? That's our destiny, is to be sovereign. And so, you know, we are thinking about these questions, and it's hard. It's emotionally challenging, and it's also, you know, mentally challenging, because so much of this politicking, or like Tiny says from Poor Magazine in the Bay, she says politricking, right? Like, so much of that is made up from very real barriers to sovereignty, you know, to the things that we believe in. And so what does it mean to take this seriously and to try our best to engage genuinely with each other and trying to figure out what are the ways forward? How do we make concrete demands? How do we not just engage in aspirational politics where we come here with hopes that something might happen? No. Like, we spent resources to get here. How do we make sure that we show up with something to ask, or for something for people to really help build with us? And how do we keep some of those demands and needs of our people, of Indigenous people all over this continent, but particularly within these colonial borders? Like, how do we keep that at the center and not water it down, which I think is another thing we talk about. It's the way that folks who engage in the inside strategy routinely, which takes a lot of skill, it's hard work, you know, I'm not going to knock that, but how do we make sure that the inside game, quote unquote, which is all of this DC stuff here on, you know, Capitol Hill, or, you know, how do we make sure that that doesn't get reformed or like negotiated away from why we're here, from what we're fighting for? And so I hope that with that degree of consciousness and actually having these hard conversations, that we're able to come here and deliver something. It will be slow, but again, this is a tactic. That's what advocacy is for us. But we're here in order to represent people who cannot be here. And so with that comes great responsibility, and I hope that we can do that correctly. I mean, you know, for me, I'm Palestinian. I was born in exile. And it's not lost on me that Biden just went to Israel and called himself a Zionist, right? I know where I stand in terms of the political will and the favor here in this so-called country. And so, you know, it's also been an interesting journey for me to think about what opportunities we do have and what it looks like to really fight for collective liberation, with LANDBACK as a core framework to that, right? If we don't challenge the United States and the system of oppression that this country is built on, what kind of change can we actually produce? And so, I don't know. I just want to acknowledge that, and also want to acknowledge that, you know, it's a privilege to be here, and that means that we have to step it up. And so we also know that many people before us in this LANDBACK fight and in the fight for Indigenous self-determination, dignity, sovereignty have come to DC and have made some really important contributions. And so I don't know if we want to talk about some of those like practicalities, but you know, that's also real. And so honoring that legacy and that hard work, we inherit the contradictions, we inherit the complications, and we have inherited one of the worst, you know, cases of poverty, hunger, illness, just defeat, frankly, across the U.S. for poor and working people that we ever have faced here in the so-called United States. And so, you know, and we know with all of that, Indian country gets the brunt, right? And so that's the moment that we're in.
Yeah, and I think just even going further into like, one, like none of us like really want to be here. And that's just a huge part of just like understanding like, okay, well, I'm not going to beg these Congress people. I'm not going to beg these senators or legislators for, to liberate my people. Like, that's not what we're here for. I think all of us understand like our strength and like where change is actually going to happen, is like, you know, to the, like at the bottom to the left, just like our hearts. And I don't know, like that's like just something that I've internalized. Like that's been like my political understanding is like this. I don't know. I went to meetings all day. This is like my first time here in Capitol Hill, really like meeting with like Congress people, meeting with senators, meeting with representatives, and I don't know, like it's everything that I was told. Like you only get like what 10, 15 minutes, and there's like I don't know 6-10 people in the room, like, and everyone has to like do like their quick elevator speeches before like this representative or whoever's on to like their next thing. And I understand like, and even a lot of times you're not even meeting with like the representative or like the person you're supposed to meet with. You're meeting with their staff, and like no disrespect to their staff, but at the same time it's just like, man, like my people are dying, my people are suffering, and like I understand like the stories that came from like my grandparents, my great grandparents, and understanding like how bad this country has fucked over our people, not just my people but people globally. And like when you come here like in the belly of the beast, and you're face to face with these people that make these decisions, it's like hard not to like have like that rage, or like it's hard like not to like I don't know, have this complicated feeling of like, why am I here? Like really, like why am I here? But also like, how do I make this moment matter? Like how do I like Nadia talked about, like the resources that got me here, like even being like in a room full of relatives, when like being a voice like where a lot of like our relatives like can't talk to these people. Like how do I in this moment like make this moment impactful? And so I don't know, like it is like a lot of like complicatedness. It's a lot of like contradictions of this isn't my politics, but also like I have like a responsibility, I have like a role to fill here. And also I think what helps too is like understanding like I'm not the first person to do this. I'm not the first like Native person to do this. I'm not the first like person of a color, like oppressed person to come into this space and like actually like have to have these meetings too with these representatives or politicians or whatever. And just understanding like, this is just one tactic. Like, I don't know, like the way I like to think about it is like, I don't know, like I like to think in terms of movies, or like, I don't know, like Lord of the Rings, or I don't know, the Avengers, Marvel. I don't know, some of those people, like some of those superheroes like had to do things like they didn't want to do, or had to work with people that they didn't want to do, but sometimes you just got to do it like to defeat Thanos, or like throw the ring in the fire. Like, geez Louise, like this is why we're here. And I actually, all of us just came from we had to teach youth. We took a bunch of youth from the Plains region, and had a whole leadership LANDBACK Youth Leadership Academy to teach them how to organize, to become like the next revolutionaries, to come to fight for LANDBACK, and like the ways that we've been trained in like politicized, and like trying to impart that onto like the younger generation. And like that was like one of the teachings we told them, is like there's going to be a diversity of tactics, there's going to be like contradictions, there's going to be like sometimes you're going to have to work with people that you want to work with, or like sometimes you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do, but guess what, like that's just what it takes to resist. That's what it takes to like stand up for your people, and that's just the truth. And I'm sorry, like that is like what it is, but at the same time, like that's what your ancestors do. Like that's why we play this game. But I don't know, like that's all I got to say about that.
Thanks, D. I had to write notes down. There's a bunch of things that are coming up, and I didn't want to interrupt y'all. I just was thinking about, we've been having a lot of conversations as a team of like what it means to be like sovereigntists, and like I'm someone who I really resist labels. I don't like being labeled as like socialist or communist or anarchist or like all of the things, right? I actually resist that, because I always say like, and this is what my dad taught me, my family taught me, is that like we're spirit beings having a human experience, and we're just trying to do the best we can, right? And like leave something for our future generations, and maybe something better for our future generations. And so I think about that a lot. But one thing I will call myself is a sovereigntist. I've been really fortunate and like blessed to have mentors in my life that have guided me and still guide me. I still reach out all the time when I'm confused, or when complicated things come up, and I just want to visit and process through things, and like we all need that in our lives. But I think something that came up with them more recently was around the idea of being sovereigntist, and around the idea of like there's no one way out of settler colonization. We don't have the one answer right now that's going to get us out of this. I think that it's our responsibility to try many different routes and as many different paths forward as we possibly can. And that's really what we're doing here. Like, I'm not putting all my faith in this, but I am trying it because we're here and we have privilege as staff and people who are part of NDN Collective, and we have access in a way that many people in our communities don't have access. We know that most of our people can't be here. It's too damn expensive. They can't travel here for all the reasons, COVID and like all of that. And so we acknowledge that and we recognize that. And so why not try when we can, Why not try out all of these different routes, all of these different strategies, all of these different tactics? And we need all of them too, because no one way is going to get us out of this. No one way is just like, there's no silver bullet. Just like, boom, we're out of settler colonization and we're into sovereignty. That doesn't exist. And so we have to wade through the complicatedness. We have to wade through the messiness. We have to have the hard conversations. We have to continue reaching out to other folks that have different perspectives, that are thinking differently, and ask for that guidance. And so, we're doing that, and that's why we're here. It's because we're trying that out. The other part about it too that I want to say is that we're also a team who, if we're going to play an inside game, then we're here to make sure that this inside game is accountable to the outside game, and that it's accountable to the grassroots, and that what we are saying and what we are demanding of folks in these offices is in alignment with what our communities are asking of us. And that's really important. It can't be the other way around. Inside strategy does not guide the outside and the grassroots. It has to be accountable to the outside strategy. It has to be accountable to our grassroots, to our community, our peoples. And that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. We're not out here claiming that we make all the right decisions or that we do all the right things, because that's not how it is. It's just not reality. But we are committed to going through it. We are committed, and we're willing to make mistakes. We're willing to just try the things, until something works. And so I think that's, part of it. The last part I'll say, and then I don't know if it triggered any thoughts in y'all, but the last thing I'll add is around like the Black Hills, and just like we've been organizing locally. We're a campaign team we're willing to come here to spaces that we're not comfortable in, and that we know we're not welcome in, and we know, we can't put all our eggs in this one basket. And we're also a team that will hit the streets when we need to. We'll hit front lines when we need to. We're a team that will sit with our elders and just be quiet and listen to what they have to say. And so we'll do those things. And so, we've been doing that around the Black Hills. We've been researching, we've been studying, we've been interviewing our elders and sitting and listening with them and talking with them and like hearing what they went through, and also hearing like how proud they are of like where we are right now, and how much progress. And it's easy to get caught up in like all of the bad things happening and how overwhelming these issues are. And also when you listen to our elders, you hear how far we've come, and we get to hear just like how blessed we are to be in some of these spaces, and to have access to some of these things that they never had access to. And so with the Black Hills stuff, we've been doing that work, and we've been having those conversations. And, we started out, organizing around like a Section 17 corporation and like, wanting to do that. And it turns out that's not the route, And so all that work and all those months of doing that and all of that, and now that's just not the route. And so we're pivoting, we're shifting gears, and we're looking at other routes, like what do our traditional governing systems and bodies look like today, right? In a way that makes sense for today's issues and the things that we're experiencing now. And we don't have the answers, and so we're just exploring that. What does it look like for the federal government to interact with the traditional governance, not just IRA, you know, because we know that they're going to go back and say like, oh, well, you know, it has to be a nation to nation relationship. But the only ones that they're acknowledging as a nation is the IRA governments. But it doesn't have to be like that. Like, who said it has to be like that? You know, and so we're here and we're trying to explore what that looks like. And we're asking them those questions. What does that look like? Are you open to that? Can we figure out what this will look like? And we're not just letting them tell us that, oh, that's not going to work, or any of that. And we're telling them what we want and what we expect. And then from that point, we can figure out, okay, what is the path forward around that? And not to say that's going to be the final answer either, to reclaim the Black Hills, you know? We don't know what that's all going to look like, but we're here. We're willing to try it. We're willing to fail, and we're willing to get up the next day and try it again. But I don't know. Those were some of the points that came up whenever I was listening to both of you talk. But I don't know. So I don't know if anything came up for y'all.
Yeah. I think like in the same vein as what y'all are talking about. I think like, you know, Crystal's talking about failing, right? Trying our way out of hundreds of years of oppression and resistance, you know? And we're here today because our people haven't just taken the oppression that's been dished out to them, or the restructuring of our economies and our governments that are also part of oppressing us and keeping us poor, keeping us voiceless, removing that connection between our languages and cultures, you know, and traditional, you know, ways that we've empowered ourselves, right, of who we are, of that tenacity that we have. Like, we're tenacious people. We come from tenacious people. We all do. And so I think, like, you know, something that really grounds us, just maybe to say it in a way that we also talk about, is principles. You know, what grounds us, what guides us is our principles. And so when things get sticky and when we have to really engage with, is this a politically principled thing to do? Is this a stance that we can take when we're working maybe with certain people we don't agree with? Well, what's our primary contradiction? What's the line? You know, what are we unwilling to compromise on? And I think that, you know, we read a lot, we talk a lot about history, and that's a lesson that we've been able to really pull from that, from the histories that we come from people's histories and people's movements, from local organizing and internationalist struggles. That's something that we really carry. And so, again, it's a learning experience. If there's feedback from y'all who are watching, who are part of communities that are struggling, you know, against the policies of the so-called United States and against, you know, years and years of disempowerment, and you have something to say to us about ideas or things moving forward, like, talk to us. We are accessible. That's one of our principles, to be open to real good faith dialogue and to be real, right? To accept criticisms, to commit to being better, to commit to trying this. And I think, you know, it makes me happy to think that there are elders on this earth who we are making proud, who we can make proud through being here today, because we know, and we also don't know, what they have sacrificed. And that's the thing about organizing and movement, right? Staying in your principles. It is a sacrifice, and we all make different sacrifices. And so, yeah, just in the spirit of being open to experimenting and trying to get our way out of this collectively without leaving anyone behind, those are some of the things that guide us. And so, you know, this is an encouragement to reach out. You know where to find us, so find us, talk to us, and look forward to speaking with y'all. And really, shout out to our communities, and shout out to the ancestors who came before us. And also land back as a future narrative. We talk about that all the time. This narrative of land back isn't for us. It's for the future. It's for the next generation. That's why we work with youth. right? It's about purpose, stepping into the purpose, to the original instructions, to the work that we're born to do, that we are called to do through being who we are. That's LANDBACK. And so instead of divesting from our youth, instead of shaming them, instead of being, letting them be victimized by racism and poverty and all the different systems that have come, in order to structurally oppress them, all the things that we've also had to face. There are different ways, and they have the answers. And I hope that one day we will be able to learn from the people who are young now, so they can tell us where to go. But in the meantime, our responsibility is to try to create some building blocks so that when they jump into this, they're a little bit closer to the end than we were. And so I guess I'll just say that.
I don't got nothing else really to say. Say, LANDBACK. That's all I got. LANDBACK by any means necessary.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. Like, welcome to the inside of some of the LANDBACK team's dialogue. We have these conversations all the time, because we're constantly just, like this organizing stuff's not easy, y'all. It's like, it's hard, and we have to constantly ask questions, constantly challenge each other, constantly check each other. The one thing I'll add before closing out is really just like our spirituality. And, like, we're all here representing peoples. We're all here because of prayers that were said, right? Like, that's why we still are alive. Is because of like ceremony and prayers and all of these sacrifices that our ancestors made. And even now, currently, like we're here because of prayer. And not to say that, like that's what led us to all of our next steps. Like any next step we take. I don't know how many times in the campaign since I've been, here with this campaign, I don't know how many times I did it. I had no clue what the next step was supposed to be. Because running a campaign like this is like a massive undertaking for 3 people. And there's moments we don't know what we're doing next. There's moments where we're just like, where do we go from here? And no matter what, our next step is always placed in front of us. It's always there. And so that's how we end up in spaces like this. That's how we end up in spaces with all youth for the last week that we were in California with them, investing in them. It's how we are really blessed and fortunate to be in a lot of spaces. And it's how our ancestors got us to this point and they got us this far. And through our prayers that we lay down here in these places, our youth will have that much more to go off of, right? The way that Nadia said. And so I want to acknowledge that part too, of just like, this work is not disconnected from who we are. It's not disconnected from our communities and our culture and our spirituality or any of that. It's in fact like deeply, deeply rooted in it, to the point that like those are our next steps. Oftentimes we kind of don't know sometimes what we're going to do next, and somehow it works out. Somehow it presents itself, or this opportunity and a door opens. And we just follow that. We just take that next step. And so, with that, I just want to ground us in that. And just thank y'all for spending your evening listening to some of the